We are right up against the WNBA deadlines towards having a collective bargaining agreement done with the Players Association. Remember, that deadline has been imposed by the league as March 10th to have the season played without interruption. And yesterday we got a wild report from ESPN, great reporting from multiple reporters talking about a letter that was written from Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart, two of the biggest names in the WNBA right now. It was acquired by ESPN. It was a letter to the WNBPA executive, Terri Jackson, that expresses, this is, quote, serious concerns about how the PA is handling the current negotiation. They talked about lack of communication with the players. They talked about whether or not they should be negotiating from the offer from the league. This was the first time we've seen the proverbial crack in the armor, Caroline, as these negotiations always get hairy. And now you have the owners who are sitting over here, at least from the outside looking in, unified, which is what we thought of the players. But 24 hours ago when this report became public, that sudden unification is now in question.
There has been a shift in public sentiment and in like feeling and vibe, for lack of a better word, throughout these negotiations. If we want to go back to last summer, to last fall, pre the initial deadline, the October 31st initial deadline, it felt like the players were so unified, while the league itself and the owners were just trying to kind of dot their I's and cross their T's. It felt like there was so much support from the fan base, from the WNBA world, from the basketball world, backing the players. Exactly. Pay your players. Pay them what you owe them. And while I do think there's a huge fraction of people that want everybody to feel like, I think pretty much everybody wants everybody to feel like they're getting what they deserve. The players feel like they get what they deserve. The league gets what they need in order to, continue a business model, to stay in the black. But it feels like there's been this shift that the owners now feel far more unified than the players do. That there's been this more public backing for the league and this kind of frustration with the players of like, just get this done. We want a season. We want games to be played. We don't want there to be a delay. And if you look at the WNBA calendar, it's tight. It's packed. It's pretty jam-packed over the next month and some change. You have 2 expansion drafts, or at least a draft for 2 expansion teams. You have the collegiate draft that's coming up. And also, I don't know if anybody's looked at their calendar, it's March. The basketball world's pretty busy in the month of March. So you have all of these things that need to be done. You have a training camp that needs to go off. You have all of these things that need to be done. And we don't even know what the players are going to be making this next year. We don't even know how long the next PA is going to be. You have a pretty long to-do list. So you have all of these fans that are now feeling the pressure and feeling the heat of the potential of a delayed season, or maybe not even a season altogether. So there's been a massive shift, I believe, or at least that I feel, in where in public sentiment and unification. It does feel now that you have 2 leaders in the WNBA, not just in feeling, not just in the number of years that they've served in this league, but Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart both serve on the board for the WNBPA. And we have both of them coming out and expressing a certain sentiment that feels different than maybe some sentiments that we've heard from other leaders in the WNBPA. I talked to myself and Cassandra Nolly, my co-host on Hoops 360. We talked to Nafisa Collier about a week or so ago, a couple of weeks ago. And she said, if we have to miss games, then so be it. We want to get this thing right. But now we have a different sentiment coming from other leaders in the WNBPA. There's been a fracture. There's been a different sentiment coming from the leaders in the Players Association, which I think is a very, very dangerous place to be, an uncomfortable place to be, when you have different messaging coming from the leadership that exists in the Players Association on March 4th.
This is a byproduct of just some simple facts in collective bargaining, though. Like, to me, because you're right, all of this looks like we suddenly see a different level of unification. But we should stress here, there are 13 teams in the WNBA, right? So expansion is going to bring a couple more. But so you're talking about, let's say, roughly 15 ownership groups that have to be unified. 15 ownership groups that are mostly billionaires that own multiple businesses need to be unified together. As of right now, there's about 150 players in the WNBPA. that means that you need 150 players to be as unified as 13 owners. 150 players that are in a much different financial spectrum than where the owners are. Some of these players, there are some stars that are making plenty of money and they don't have to worry about anything. But there are plenty of players in the W that frankly have to worry about how they're going to pay their bills coming up, right? So this is why this is always an issue. And we talk about it in the NFL all the time. In the NFL, you have a couple thousand players in the NFLPA versus 32 NFL owners. I saw Jeff Passan yesterday, tweeting about the understanding that, hey, baseball fans, look at this. These are things that we need to keep in mind when you start talking about baseball negotiations with the upcoming collective bargaining agreement happening there, because at the end of the day, there are thousands of players in a players union typically, and there's only, depending on your league, anywhere from 15 to 32 team owners. It's much easier to keep 30 people or 15 people in this WNBA case that all make sort of the same amount of money, that are all in that same private jet lifestyle. You keep them unified to a business purpose, is simply easier. So to me, what's really telling here is that two of the biggest names in the sport right now, and a legend like Breanna Stewart, by the way, for the sport overall, you've got two of the biggest names coming out saying, we're not being heard enough. But they're not saying that to the owners. They're saying that to their own union. They're not saying that to the teams. They're not saying that to the press. They're saying that to their own representative that is representing them in negotiations. That, to me, is a telling moment where you have some of the faces of the league speaking up for some of the other members of the union. That's why it's perceived as a crack in the armor, whether it is or it isn't. Just the minor detail of them in writing saying we should be negotiating off of the most recent owner's offer, not off of our own offers, tells you that they understand, hey, we're in a situation here where we need to get things done. So I don't look at the crack in the armor, as we keep calling it, as weakness. I look at it as understanding. I, on this show, have sat back many times and said, I'm not sure the players understand the damage that would be done by a lockout. This, to me, is one of those first indicators where we actually do have players looking around saying, wait a minute, we got to think long and hard about this, because what damage will this do? Right or wrong, in the court of public opinion, what damage will missed games actually do for their wallets, for the popularity of the sport, for the way people view everybody in this process, Caroline? I think that's the devil's in the details here, and the details are showing us that the players are within their own group starting to ask questions they don't feel they're getting answers from their own representation.
And that's what deadlines do, right? We have the proposed deadline from the WNBA of March 10th of, look, if we don't get the CBA signed, we will miss games. Deadlines breed urgency. And I think now, more so than ever, and this letter is the example of that, is proof of that the WNBPA, the Players Association, the players themselves are feeling the heat of that deadline and are understanding the gravity of missing games, how detrimental that could and will be to the league. That we have Women's Sports Sundays coming up on Sunday evenings in the summer on ESPN. That is the largest investment that any cable network has made to women's sports ever, period, in history. That is such a wonderful opportunity for the WNBA to take the amount of growth that they have had over the last couple of years and compound that and grow it even more. Having a platform like that, I think, is exactly the next step that the WNBA needs to make in their trajectory of growth. That we now have household names in this league, that the league is getting covered more than it ever has been, that the league has been invested into more than ever, that we have 2 expansion teams coming into the league in 2026 and 3 more until 2030. That is growth, that is popularity, that is money, that is financial investment. But none of it matters if you don't have eyeballs on your sport. So that's what they're getting this season on ESPN. Eyeballs on your sport. Invaluable real estate. But none of that matters if you miss games. And it's not just a WNBA thing. Ask baseball. Go back to 1994 in Major League Baseball, how detrimental that was to the sport of baseball that didn't really get right until Long Gone Summer. And that was like an unprecedented amount of star power and intrigue where you're finally getting the viewership up. You were finally getting attendance up in the ballparks. So that was the span of 5 years where baseball was just kind of trying to find its way. We're talking about baseball here. I love women's basketball. I love the WNBA, but let's not kid ourselves. The WNBA is not on the same level as Major League Baseball. So, what this shows me is a level of understanding from the players that, look, we want something. We want this target number and revenue share. If the league's not going to budge, then we're going to have to budge. Because what helps our bottom line more than anything is playing basketball, far more than playing hardball in negotiations.